There is a bucket sitting at my feet on the bank right now with about a quart of something in it that looks like wet sand and smells like a bakery. It cost me under $1. In a moment, I'm going to pour it into the water 4 feet out, and inside of 10 minutes there will be bluegill working under that spot. And inside of 20 there will be something bigger sitting underneath them waiting. I have not put any bait in the water. There is nothing in that bucket a fish can eat that would fill him up. What I have poured in is a cloud, and the cloud is the entire trick. I want to be plain at the start about what this is and is not, because there is a great deal of confusion about it. This is not chumming a spot with feed and waiting 3 days, which is a different thing, and I have talked about it before. This works in minutes, not days, and it does not work by filling fish up. It works by doing something to the water that a fish cannot ignore, and once you understand what that something is, you will be able to make it out of whatever is in your kitchen for the rest of your life. I have fished the same water for 51 years, and I have never bought a bag of anything to pour in a lake. My grandmother is the one who taught me this, and she taught it to me the way she taught everything, which was by handing me a job. She would send me down to the creek with a bucket and tell me to bring back a double handful of the fine sand off the bottom by the shallow bend. Then she would put that sand in a pan with a heel of stale bread, crumbled fine, and a scoop of oats, wet it with creek water, and work it with her hands until it held together. She never explained a word of it. I was 14 before I understood I had been mixing bait. Today, I'm going to tell you exactly what a cloud does in the water, and why a fish comes to it when there is nothing there worth eating. I am going to give you the mixture, with amounts, made from things you already own. I am going to tell you exactly how to pour it and where. And I'm going to give you the one step almost everybody gets wrong, which ruins the whole thing, and which is the opposite of what your instinct will tell you to do. Then I am going to tell you the part that ought to sit uneasy with you, which is that none of this is a secret. Match anglers across Europe have done it every weekend for 100 years. It simply never crossed the water into the way most of us were taught. Stay with me. The first thing you have to understand is that a fish investigates disturbance. That is the whole of it, and everything else follows. Think about what a cloud of fine particles sinking through water actually is, from where a fish is sitting. It is a change. The water was clear and empty, and now there is a column of something drifting down through it. And that column is exactly what it looks like when a crayfish kicks up the bottom, when a turtle stirs a bank, when a flock of small fish is tearing into something, when a cow walks into the shallows. Every one of those is a thing worth going to look at, and a fish that did not go and look at them would have starved out of the gene pool a long time ago. So the cloud is not food. The cloud is news. It is the sound of a dinner bell without any dinner attached to it, and the fish comes to see. There are 3 separate things happening in that column, and it is worth knowing all 3. The first is what he sees. Fine particles hanging and turning in the water catch light and move, and in stained water, a hanging cloud is visible a good deal further than a single bait ever is. The second is what he hears. And this is the one nobody thinks about. When your handful hits the surface and breaks up, and when those particles rain down through the water, that makes a sound. Water carries sound extraordinarily well, far better than air does, and a fish hears with its whole body through that line of sensors down its side. The patter of falling particles is a very old signal, and it means feeding is happening somewhere close. And the third is scent, which is the slowest of the 3, and the one everybody else talks about. It comes last, and it holds the fish there, after the other 2 have brought him in. That is why this works in 10 minutes. And a scent trail alone takes an hour. You are not waiting for a smell to spread. You are making a commotion, and a commotion travels at the speed of sound and light. So here is the mixture, and I will be honest about every penny of it. 2 parts fine dry crumb, Stale bread dried out and crushed small, or crackers crushed in your hand, or plain breadcrumb, or a mixture of all three. This is the part that clouds, cost you nothing, since it is what you were going to throw out. 1 part oats or cornmeal. Rolled oats crushed a bit, or plain cornmeal, either does. This gives the mix some body, and it drops a little slower, which stretches the cloud out. Pennies. 1 part fine soil or sand, and this is the ingredient that everybody leaves out, and it is the one that makes the whole thing work properly. Take it from the bank you are standing on, or the bottom of the shallows. It weighs the mix. It takes it down as a column instead of letting it blow away on the surface, and it holds the crumb together in your hand so you can throw it where you want it. Free, and it belongs to that water already. And water, the water you are fishing in, out of the same lake, added slowly. That is it. Under $1 for a batch that will do you a whole evening, and most days it costs nothing at all. Now mixing it. This part matters more than people expect, and there is a test for it. Put your dry things in the bucket and stir them together with your hand. Then add water a little at a time, and I mean a little, working it through with your fingers. It will look too dry for a while. Keep going and keep it slow, because it is very easy to go too far and almost impossible to come back. Here is the test my grandmother made me do, and she would not let me carry the pan to the water until it passed. Squeeze a handful hard, then open your hand. If it holds its shape but breaks apart when you poke it with a finger, it is right. If it will not hold at all, it needs a little more water. If it stays in a hard-packed lump when you poke it, you have gone too far, and it will go to the bottom as a rock and do nothing at all. You want a ball that will survive the throw and then break up on the way down or shortly after it lands. That is the whole of what you are trying to build. Now, before I tell you where to put it, do me one small favor. If this is landing for you so far, tap the like button. And if you are not subscribed to this channel, take 3 seconds and do it, and switch the bell on so the next one finds you when it comes out. That is the only thing I will ask you for today. All right, back to the bucket. Where you put it decides whether it helps you or ruins your evening. Pick your fishing spot first, and then do not pour on top of it. That is the mistake, and I will come back to it. But the short of it is that you want your cloud landing where the fish will gather, and your bait sitting at the edge of that gathering, not in the middle of the crowd. Pick a spot you can hit again and again. 4 to 15 feet out is plenty from a bank. Any further, and you cannot put your handfuls in the same place twice. And putting them in the same place twice is the entire point. A cloud spread over 30 feet of water is nothing. A cloud dropped in the same square yard 6 times running is a place. Line it up on something. A reed, a rock, a branch on the far bank. You need to be able to hit that same yard in the dark. Depth. This works best in 3 to 12 feet. In shallower water, the cloud settles too fast to do much. In very deep water, your column has broken up and drifted before it gets down to where anything is sitting. And current. If there is any flow at all, put your cloud in upstream of where you intend to fish, so the drift carries it down over your bait. How far upstream depends on the flow, and you will work it out in one evening. If there is a wind pushing across, allow for the same drift. Now, step 3, and this is the one nearly everybody gets wrong, and it is the opposite of what your hands will want to do. Do not pour it all in at once. Here is what happens. A man mixes up a good bucket, gets to the water, and tips the whole lot in because he wants the biggest possible cloud, and for about 4 minutes, it is glorious. Then the cloud settles, and the fish that came in find a pile of crumb on the bottom, and they eat it, and they fill up, and they leave. He has fed them their supper, and sent them home, and he sits there for 3 hours, wondering what went wrong. The way to do it is small and often. A handful the size of a hen's egg, in the same yard of water, every 5 or 10 minutes, all evening. That is it. That is the entire discipline of it. What that does is keep a column of particles going down through that water continuously, so the news never stops arriving. And there is never enough on the bottom for any fish to actually fill himself on. You are holding them there in a state of looking, which is exactly where you want them. Because a fish that is looking for something to eat and cannot quite find it will take your bait very readily indeed. And when the bites start coming, do not stop. That is the second half of the same mistake. Men get a run of fish, get busy, and forget to keep feeding, and 20 minutes later, the fish have wandered off, and they cannot understand why. Keep the little handfuls going the whole time you are catching. The moment the cloud stops, the clock starts running on your spot. 1 handful, every few minutes, all evening. Less than you think, more often than you think. That right there is the most useful thing I am going to say today. And if it earned its keep, hit the like button and make certain you are subscribed with the bell switched on. It takes 3 seconds, and it is the only reason a fellow talking about a bucket of wet crumbs ever gets put in front of anybody. 2 smaller things that belong with it. Put a little of whatever you are fishing with into the mix, if you can. A few grains of corn, a chopped worm, a couple of crushed maggots, whatever is on your hook. It teaches the fish that the thing on your hook is part of the same free meal. And fish just off the cloud, a foot or 2 to the near side of it, for the same reason I have given you before, which is that the biggest fish in that gathering does not sit in the middle of the crowd. He sits at the edge and lets the little ones do the finding. Now, for the honest part, because I am not going to sell you something I have to shade the truth about. And there are 4 things you need to hear. The first is the law. Putting any substance in the water to attract fish counts as chumming, and chumming is regulated. Some states permit it freely, some allow it only on private water, some prohibit it outright, and trout waters are very often stricter than everything else. It varies from state to state, and sometimes from lake to lake. Look it up on your state wildlife agency page before you carry a bucket down to the bank. It takes 4 minutes, and I would far rather you check than take my word and get a citation. The second is that you must put nothing in that water except food. Plain crumb, plain grain, soil from that same bank. No oil, no chemicals, no scented products, nothing from under a sink. And do not do this in a small pond week after week in quantity, because a small water can only take so much before it starts to affect the water itself. On a big lake, a handful of breadcrumbs is nothing at all. In a 1/4-acre farm pond, moderation is not just politeness. It is the difference between a pond that fishes well next year and one that does not. The third is that this is not for every fish or every water. It is very good on bluegill and panfish, on carp, on catfish. And by way of the crowd it draws, it is good on base sitting underneath. It does very little for the fish that hunt fast and by sight in open water. And in strong current it washes out before it can do anything. So this belongs to still water and slow water. And the fourth is the honest limit on the promise in the title. 10 minutes is a fair number for panfish on a good evening in warm water. The bigger fish take longer, because they come in behind the small ones, and they are more careful about it. If you are after something big, put your cloud in and give it half an hour before you expect much, and keep feeding through the whole of that half hour. Now, why has nobody told you this? Go and look on the shelf. Ground bait is sold in bags in this country now, $10 and $12 and $15 for a sack of what is, when you read the panel, crushed biscuit and grain and a little flavoring. It is good stuff. I am not going to tell you it is a swindle, but it is stale bread and oats in a printed bag, and the printed bag is most of what you are paying for. And the harder part is that the thing which actually matters here cannot be sold at all. The mixture is worth very little. The discipline is worth everything. And the discipline is a handful every 5 minutes for 3 hours, which is not a product and never will be. No company can put patience in a sack. I do not believe anybody held a meeting about this. I want to be clear, because I have no use for that sort of thinking. It is quieter than a conspiracy, and, to my mind, worse. Everybody along the line simply has no reason to raise it. The shop does not raise it, because the shop has the sacks. The magazine does not, because the magazine sells its pages to the company that fills them. The fellow on the television does not, because a man throwing egg-sized handfuls into the same yard of water for 3 hours makes very poor television indeed. Nobody has to coordinate a thing. They only have to stay quiet, and they have stayed quiet for 60 years. We kept it because we had to. When you have stale bread in a creek bank and no money, you find out what stale bread in a creek bank will do. That knowledge never lived in books. It lived in a pan on a kitchen table with a boy's hands in it. I asked my grandmother once, when I was grown and finally understood what she had been having me do all those years, why she had never explained it. She thought about that for a while, the way that generation did before they said anything worth hearing. Then she said, "You would not have believed me," she said. "A boy who is told that dirt and old bread will call fish will go and buy something instead the first chance he gets." And then she said the part I have carried ever since, which was, "Some things you have to do with your hands for 10 years before you will let yourself believe them." I have thought about that most of my life, and I do not believe she was only talking about bait. If this was worth your evening, do the 3 small things that help. Hit the like button, subscribe to this channel, turn the bell on. That is the whole of it, and it is what puts this in front of the next fellow about to pay $15 for a sack of crushed biscuit. So here is what I want you to do. Check your state rules on chumming. Then take a bucket, 2 parts dried crumb, 1 part oats or cornmeal, 1 part fine soil off the bank you are standing on. Wet it slowly with lake water until a squeezed handful holds together but breaks when you poke it. Pick a spot 4 to 15 feet out in 3 to 12 feet of water. Line it up on something so you can hit it every time and allow for the drift. Then put in 1 handful the size of a hen's egg. Wait 5 minutes. Put in another. Keep that going all evening, including while you are catching. And fish a foot or 2 off the edge of the cloud rather than in the middle of it. Then come back and tell me in the comments what state you are in, what water you fished, how long it was before the first fish showed, and what came in behind them. I read every one of them, and the reports folks send back are the reason I keep doing this. Next time, I am going to show you the 1 knot my grandfather tied for everything he ever caught. It takes about 4 seconds. It holds better than what is printed on the side of your line spool, and almost nobody under 60 has ever been taught it. Most of what you lose right there at the hook, and it is not the line that failed you. Until then, keep your line wet, keep your handful small, and remember that the people who fed their families off this water with their hands knew things we are only just beginning to remember.